When we're talking about exercise as a form of recovery from long COVID, the easiest, simplest, cheapest option is always going to be walking. It's difficult to go wrong with that. You can track your heart rate even just by counting beats if you don't have a monitor or you find it's not quite accurate enough. But there gets a stage where you need to be challenging that cardiovascular fitness a bit more, and we then start looking at running, which is again quite a simple way of doing it, but tracking the intensity and keeping that heart rate under control can be extremely challenging whilst doing that, especially as we then have the variations of hills, declines, awkward pavements. There's lots of things that can make it a bit more tricky for you. And especially we have another one, which is where there are issues with balance and dizziness, as well as simply having an elevated heart rate just through the act of standing up. So if we can do some form of exercise where we're sat down, we're not getting that same elevated heart rate to begin with, and this is where rowing can be exceptional in terms of our ability to control not only perceived exertion but also the effort that's being shown from the heart rate. Now it is important to note that using a wrist-based heart rate monitor does not work at all well when using a rowing machine due to the fact we're clenching the wrist so much. So you do need a chest-based heart monitor. I'm wearing a Garmin HRM Pro to go with the Fenix, but that is an absolute requirement if you are rowing. However, having spent a reasonably large sum of money on a rowing machine, you should be able to then stretch to getting a wrist strap, and I would always recommend getting a pair of proper rowing shorts as well. These are Godfrey, handmade in Nottingham. It's simply worth it from the simple fact that it does aid with airflow and removal of sweat, so you don't get that god awful chafing, which I did have when I first started before I discovered these. So what we're looking at here is how we can control that heart rate as we go through a very simple workout. At the moment, before we start, my heart rate is at 53, 54, 53 beats, 50, 48 beats per minute. So dropping as I'm nice and relaxed. I'm just going to keep on coming back to this as we go through. Now, should we launch straight into things? Yes and no. There's lots of different drills you can do. We are going to stick to the simple stroke for now though, but you'll notice that I'm starting off really relaxed and slow, and I forgot to press the monitor on. Let's do that as well. I didn't press start here. Okay. So at this stage, really relaxed, really easy. I'm at 15 strokes per minute. It's not at all difficult. I'm not concerned about the overall intensity, what that speed, what pace per 500 litres is. I'm just very gently going through the movement, working on this drive from the hips. Very steady, relaxed. So just doing that, my heart rate is at 72 beats a minute. I would expect yours to be higher simply because of that elevated heart rate response that you're going to get with long COVID. So this is the principle of it rather than the actual numbers. Now, a great thing about sticking to a really low stroke rate like this is working on that form, ensuring that drive comes from the hips. So you drive from the hips, draw the elbows back, reach forwards, make sure that you're over the knees before you draw the legs in. controlled and steady. We now have options in terms of that ability to increase the effort. The obvious one is simply increasing that stroke rate. Taking up to 16, 17, 18, up to about 20 strokes a minute. I'm still trying to keep that quite gentle and light on the legs. There we go, 20 strokes a minute. Just going to ease into that before checking the heart rate again. Okay, my heart rate is now at 83 beats a minute. Now I'm going at 2 minutes 56 to 500 metres. A normal effort for me is closer to 2 minutes per 500 metres. If we equate this to running, so that would be 4 minutes a kilometre, dropping to this is currently at 6 minutes a kilometre. So I'm actually going slightly faster for the efforts compared to if I'm running. 82 beats a minute, but you see my heart rate, if I was running at 6 minutes per kilometre, my heart rate's going to be somewhere in the 130s. Rising certainly above 150, probably 160 if I'm at 4 minutes a kilometre. At the moment, I'm still at 80 beats a minute. The breathing's getting a little bit more challenging. But you see, not only are we using those upper back muscles, more working on the postural muscles too, but relative to running, the intensity is easier. As you get to the end, you're going to feel like you've had more of a workout. So I'm going to drop this back down now to 15 strokes a minute. I'm going to try something different and see what the heart rate response is then. So already my heart rate's coming down to 75. And that's a bit strange. The monitor says it thinks I'm doing 28 strokes a minute there. Okay. So my heart rate's back down now below 70. So instead, now I'm going to stick to that steady pace, but I'm going to work on that drive, that power from the hips and the pause at the back to keep the stroke rate low. Not dissimilar, it's working on very focused squat or leg press type movements. Really controlled. And my heart rate's immediately come up to 80 beats a minute again. So now I'm going to combine the two. More power and higher stroke rates. We're going to see a much quicker, higher increase in heart rate. Up to 90 beats a minute ready. 97. I'm at 215 at 500 metres. 100 beats a minute on the heart rate now. So if you think about this in terms of being able to control that heart rate response, you think, well, this would be equivalent to a tempo run, and yet my heart rate, 106. much lower. Yes, of course, if I'm doing sprints, then I'm going to get much higher response, up to 107 beats per minute. But I can keep this up nice and steady and see a very gradual continued increase in overall heart rate. But now if I just slow it back a little bit, what I'm going to try and do is get to that point where I'm at 90 beats per minute and hold that nice and steady there. So you can hear that I'm a little bit out of breath doing that. Going to 2 now. So I can still challenge my breathing, but that overall heart rate response is massively lowered. 100 beats a minute. So this is why a rowing machine can be awesome. Now I don't know about in the States, but certainly in the UK, you can actually hire rowing machines. Find the link, I'll put it in the notes. So it gives you an option really to try before you buy. Personally, I love the water rower. I love the sound, love the feel. It's very much like being out in the middle of water. However, the monitors are certainly not as good as, or as easy I find to use as those on the concepts. There's less immediate obvious data there. I think the other thing with the water is it does look a lot prettier and you can stand it on end so it doesn't take up loads of room. It does have advantages, but from a, if you that's what you're going to be getting into competitive rowing or competitive indoor rowing, everyone uses the concept, so you really ought to get one of those. If you're not too fussed and you like something that looks nice in the room, takes up little space, water all over. Okay, so I've actually used off some 2 minutes there. I'm back down to 86, 87 beats a minute. Showing how you can control that a little bit more. I mean, obviously I keep looking at the watch as my heart rate's not compatible with this monitor. There are other monitors you can get, or I could, instead of actually having watch on the wrist, I could place it on top of the drum itself and just keep a close eye on the heart rate rather than checking from the wrist. And you want to then just work at that slightly elevated heart rate, even if you just did 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time, practicing that rowing form and using that as your workout, short workouts throughout the day. You're not even going to break into a sweat, so you don't have to get changed necessarily there. To actually increase the overall activity in a very, very manageable way. Okay, let's pause at there at 10 minutes. So, any questions on that, then put a message in the comments or send a message and I'll try and answer.